David Jelks again with the IM Project, and thank you for taking the opportunity to stop by and listen to our conversations around basically it's where fitness and philosophy meet. And of course, my background being in the fitness industry for so many years, I've always had this leaning towards the more the kind of the psychological and spiritual aspect of who we are, because it has been really the biggest part of our culture, the biggest part of our history has been in that space. And uh, I guess probably a couple of years ago, good friends of mine, Sean and Carrie Lynn Owen, I kept talking about this individual that's with me now, Rain, and the work that she was doing through this program called Seeds, I believe it was.
Yep.
And but just always talking about Rain. And you got to talk to Rain. You'd love Rain. She's right up your alley. She's your person. So I'm going, okay, I have to meet this woman. So I reached out to Rain just recently because I started having conversations. What I was really concerned of, now we're here at August 18th, 2020, and the world is in this really very tumultuous state, right? There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of concern for obviously very good reasons. But what I was afraid of, what I had not seen, other than the stay-at-home orders, wear a mask, wash your hands, keep the distance, and I had this huge concern that there's nothing being spoken about a mental and spiritual health. And it was not a big conversation being had by the people that I had thought should be having the conversation, should be the leaders in that conversation. So I thought, well, perhaps maybe I can reach out to people that are very strong, in their various fields of interest, very strong in these spiritual spaces so that I could pull the best of what everybody has to offer. As we spoke before we started this message, I only know what I know. I'm kind of a limited resource, but collectively we can offer such a powerful voice, and I'm really excited to have you here. So thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and I'm excited too for today's session and meeting you as well. We've been connecting on Facebook, kind of, but finally, we got to talk. Well, not in person, but virtually. Yeah, so I'm excited to be here.
Well, it's so just a couple of questions I've been asking myself originally, and then I realized that my answers were limited. But it's a couple of questions that I had that we had spoke about is that, what is your experience of the world? Like, what do you see and feel in this environment that we're in? I mean, I have my experience of it, but what is your experience? What do you see happening in the world right now?
Well, right now with what's happening, I think we're going through a massive, breakdown. I think the irony is, I think we have also been asking for it. In many ways, we're asking for it because the way we are functioning as, human beings, the system that we've created, they just don't work. They don't work for us as human beings, and even the planet as a whole. And so we are right now, what I'm seeing is we're going through a massive breakdown. And, out of it is, I call this the Great Awakening. And you've heard this too. Some people call this the Great Awakening, but that's what's really happening.
Right.
And it's really shaking us, from many aspects, right? I mean, a systemic way is shaking, the healthcare so we're seeing what's the gap, education. We're seeing now, it's not what we think it needs to be this way. It can be this other way. Right. So we're seeing, and we're, the economy, I do foresee we're going to start seeing more of the, that system breaking down, the financial system, which is something that I've been talking for a long time and advocate for, because that's one of the systems that's keeping us in this structure right now.
Right.
And the structure that's keeping humanity, a human being, we're not functioning the way it's not keeping us in a way that we're supposed to be functioning.
Right.
Where a lot of us are just, I call it out of integrity right now. We're out of integrity. And so it's affecting us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of it, physically.
Right. I remember years ago when I first looked at meditation as a potential resource. I think it was Bill Harris was the creator of this program called HoloSync, and it was binaural. It was binaural meditation. So it was these, you put your headphones on, you listen to these beats, and it was this alpha sound
Mhm.
that would, entrain your brain for a busy, very busy brain that couldn't slow down. But there's a book that accompanied these audio CDs, and I think the title of the book was How to Manage Exponential Growth. And he talked about the law of thermodynamics, and without getting too weird about it, basically said there's everything is always under flux. Like if you have a pile of dirt in your front yard and you cover it with a tarp, so wind can't get at it, rain can't get at it, it changes, even though nothing's touching it. Everything has to change. It's constant. They said the only thing that's constant is change, right?
Yes.
Right. And and I think it's that resistance to change, that trying to hold it off, and when the system runs to a point, it actually runs to a certain level, and it has to evolve. I mean, it has to break, it has to evolve, and it feels like, well, it feels like we're dying. Like it feels, because everything that we do, that we hung on to so aggressively and so frantically, is being ripped out of our hands. So like we don't have a choice now. We cannot hang on to the way things used to be, because that will never be the same. And it's so now it's, I guess, now the challenge is, the question is, how do you manage this rebirth of economics? How do you, as individuals? I mean, it's just, I'm terrified to put my future in the hands of the powers that be. From put my hands in the hands of pharmacists and doctors, unfortunately, and political leaders. And how do I, as an individual, navigate this when I feel like my whole world's been turned upside down?
Well, I think there are many aspects, but I want to come back to one of the things that my teacher always reminds me, and this is a concept you probably know, which is being present and staying in our heart. Right. So, I bring that with me every day, because the mind does get overdrive, because that's part of its role, right? The mind, fear, and for me, I call fear as a teacher. Actually, through fear, we learn a lot about ourselves, and we learn a lot about what's happening. And fear, the purpose of fear is actually to protect us. So it's not a bad thing, right? But when it goes into overdrive, then we get overwhelmed. Our systems gets overwhelmed, and that's where it becomes, not so healthy for us, our well-being. So it's coming back to, being present, staying in our heart, because, the mind will want to think about what's the past, or what's coming, what's next, what's the future. Right. So I would say one of the first things is to just focus on, little bits of pieces of what you can control, because the mind doesn't want to control. So you need to kind of also allow it to do that, but just little pieces every day, and stay present and stay in your heart. I think that's really, really important, So that would be one thing I would say to do right now in this time, and not get too caught up in all that's going. There is a lot of prediction that this is the time, we are in this time where in terms of the spiritual messages and prophecies, we are going through this time, and it's necessary. Mother Earth is moving to a different vibration right now. Like you say, it's a birthing process. We're going through contractions right now, which is very uncomfortable. You don't want to be in there. I don't want to go through. If you imagine a baby inside the mom's tummy, and like, I don't know what's out there. I don't really want to get out there. I'm very comfortable right now with mommy. But we're going through contraction right now. Yeah.
Yeah, Braxton Hicks never looked comfortable watching women go through that.
No, it's not.
Well, listen, to touch on what you said about being present, that I found was the hardest thing in the world for me to do, because my mind likes to go and fantasize about the future and the worst possible, catastrophize. And something that took me the longest time to actually embrace was the simple aspect of breathing. And but again, my scientific mind wants to know, the esoteric mind over here says just breathing and it'll center you, and go, yeah, but how does it do that? So, but it's fascinating that even just actually nasal breathing in through your nose, it can actually slow your nervous system down, actually shut your nervous system down, as opposed to breathing through your mouth. So breathing through your mouth it can actually be more of part of the fight or flight aspect of energy. But breathing through your nose actually is more of has more of a sedative process. I found just through doing the breath work, I'm taking a part of my fitness community through a program called Just Breathe, and introduce them to different aspects of breathing that have been around forever, but for the physiological benefit of it to down regulate your nervous system so that squirrely mind can settle down, so you can be in this space. So once you're here, then you can actually see what's possible. Once you're here, then fear is no longer the messenger. Once you're here, then common sense can prevail if you allow yourself to be in that space. But my God, that probably took me 10 years just to accept that as a possibility. Like, and it's so powerful.
It's not easy. I know I've worked through, a long time too, and I think one of the main influence in what's creating our overwhelm too, it's our unconscious, right? Our subconscious mind and
Right.
some of our belief system. It does drive how we approach things and how
Right.
we behave, or our perspective of things, which affects our behavior, and then does create how we approach events as well. So I had to work through a lot of that,
Right.
letting those go in the process of it, and to be able to just know that I'm okay. I'm okay where I'm at. I'm okay just who I am, and I'm okay.
Right.
And again, honestly, we don't know when we're going to leave.
Yeah.
There is no, and there's only this moment right now, and this moment, and this moment. And I love what you say. Breath to me, it's already a gift, right? That's such a fundamental gift from divine. Breath is itself, and breath is actually one of the best way to be present.
Yeah, it's there was I was reading this article, and it said if you go to a hospital ward, and let's say you have all the heart attack patients on one ward, the one common denominator is they're all shallow breathers. The one thing they all have in common is they all shallow breathe. And so it's interesting, right? When you start looking at, and that's the power of breath. Looking at, right now we're going through the Wim Hof method. Wim Hof, but just all the scientific research, again, my brain needs to validate this seemingly esoteric practice. But the research is extraordinary at the anti-inflammatory aspects of breathing. Right? It just goes on and on. For something that is a gift, as you said, the gift that was bestowed upon you from day one has all these other things attached to it. Just breathe. And but I guess I can only speak for myself. I didn't want to think it was that simple, because my life seems so complex and so out of control that I didn't want to think that the answer to it was just breathe. It's going to be way harder than that. So there's people out there like me that have that mind saying, "Nah, it can't be that easy." Like, how do you? I know how I got myself there, but how would you, as an instructor, as somebody guiding people, how would you guide somebody of that mindset to say, really, that's what you got to do?
Well, I think one of the days what do I do in my program is I actually ask questions. So I would ask you questions like, really, what. So first of all, what's the doubt and what's holding you back, and what's really the cost for not actually doing it? Why not experience it? Give it a go and experience it for yourself.
Right.
And and again, if you're someone who needs the scientific knowledge and background, then satisfy that part of you,
Right.
Not resist that, So kind of like yourself, you actually went and did a lot of reading. I'm kind of more of that too. I get to a point, I think you do actually a lot more scientific reading than I do. I do need to satisfy that part of my mind. I need to go read it, just understand it, Like when I learned sound healing, I need to understand a little bit of the basics of, what sound, what does it do? It actually affects your parasympathetic system, right? And all that. Yet, you want to satisfy that part of your mind, and I would encourage you to just experience it and see. You have nothing to lose, right? At the end of the day. And if something is holding you back, again, I do feel sometimes this is where our belief system comes in.
Right.
Because we've been brought up a certain way, and kind of like myself, we were talking just before coming on to this podcast. I remember when I started having experiences, that I couldn't explain.
Right.
My mind was going, are you crazy right now? Are you
Yeah.
making things up, right? So I needed to, look at where that was coming from. And I realized it was just my upbringing, how people perceive, and even culture right now,
Right.
the perception of that, right?
Right.
And I had to work through all that and let those go. And now, owning that part of who I am.
Well, it's an important distinction that you made. It's just being able to, to actually contend with those ideas, right? Not dismiss them. I think we're very good at compartmentalizing things that kind of freak us out and make us uncomfortable. So we little box and we'll just tag that one for another day. Um, I was speaking with somebody uh, just around when Seattle had that whole six block closure when things were erupting in the U.S. And actually, I think I talked to my son. I said, what you see there is an evident that is discharge. It's like lightning. It's not what people believe that they're angry about isn't necessarily, because it's so exaggerated. The level of stress and discharge is it's elevated way beyond necessity, right? It's just, yes, we want to rise up and we certainly want to make our voices heard, and we want to make sure that the powers that we know that we're dissatisfied and that things do need to change. But I again, this is something that I took from my practice and doing physical rehab, is that there's a statement that says stress goes to where stress resides. So if I have an injury to my body, or let's say I have a few injuries going on inside my body, and I get rear-ended by somebody in traffic. Well, the energy that comes through me, it exacerbates. It go to the areas that are constantly under load, that have that nervous energy, that guarded posture, and they get worse. They just light up. And so energy prefers to go where pre-existing energy is already in formation. And I go, well, that's really interesting. So, and that was a kind of a physiological response to physical trauma. But then as I kind of head down this path, of course, on the spiritual side of it, going, it's so interesting this how our experience of the world, when we have a stressor like we have now, we've been put under lock and key for the last 90 days or so. It's just that stress is actually finding other stressors that are just sitting there kind of under the surface, not conscious. We have nothing that we've ever dealt with. It's just been the steady state of unrest for decades, and then something just lights it up. And so I think if we feel that we have an exaggerated response, fear or anger to the financial situation, if we have an exaggerated fear response and anger to our health concerns, we have an exaggerated fear response, anger, whatever, to, let's say, the racial division, if it feels exaggerated, then it is. And so part of the challenge for myself when I started experiencing those pieces, I just wanted to start peeling it off. I said, this is so uncharacteristic. So there's a couple phrases actually that are in our language, but I don't think that we realize how clarifying they were. If I'm, let's say I'm having coffee with you one day and I've known you for a while, but you seem kind of at a sorts, and I'm going, that's so unlike her. That's so uncharacteristic of her. But totally characteristic of her, which was 20 years ago, which is a lot more insecure. That's so unlike her as my experience of you now, but so like you 15 years ago when that part of your life was in turmoil. And so what people fail to remember is that how our body interprets reality is we take reality and we match it against pre-existing forms of reality, and the energy from that comes forward to give us our physical experience of what's going on. And if it feels elevated, then it most certainly is. And I think it's recognizing the exaggeration of our experience of the world, exaggeration amount of fear, exaggerated anger, exaggerated concern, and being mindful enough to realize this is not one thing. This is a summation of a whole bunch of unrest for the last 10 years, right?
Yeah, totally. So, like you said, we've compartmentalized them, or, what we've done, or kind of sweep it under the rock a little bit. Okay, I don't really want to look at it. I don't want to remember it. I'm just going to, do what I can and manage my life and go on. But what's happening right now with the lockdown, and again too, the lockdown, it's not just changing it's impacting everything, right, of your life, your business, your career, and then your lockdown, you're at home, relationship, like this, it's just amplified, massively amplified. And just like the change curve, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talks about.
Right.
First of all, you get shocked, and then you deny, and then you go into all this explosion of emotion, which is where all the stuff are coming out right now, right? So it's us working through those pieces, and for myself, I'll speak for myself, that during this time, I got to look at, I worked through quite a lot of my, I would say my belief system and shift them. Yet I saw more deeper layers of them coming up during this time. The good thing is, the difference is in the past, I would be more reactive. So kind of all the emotion that was hidden underneath, they started surfacing, and then I'm not able to manage them. Right now, the difference is at least I can distinguish them. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm this is what's happening. This is what it's going on for my psyche, and this is what my psyche needs right now. How do I manage it? And then, work through it right now and let those go, right? Those pieces and those layers of beliefs or traumas that happen and all that. I actually, this last few months, a lot of stuff relating to betrayal showed up for me. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, it's well again, getting back to what you're talking about in the very beginning, that we have a whole system that kept us trapped, unaware, and just running full tilt, and not allowing us, not giving us the opportunity, to breathe and to pay attention. And we get little warnings, little shocks of consciousness every now and again that go, okay, that was disturbing, and I got to drop the kids off at 9. I got to be here at 10. I got these things to do. I have I got a mortgage to pay, right? I have to work. And so we allow, I call it smoke and mirrors. We create this smoke and mirror effect, because like, I think intuitively, there's not too many people that I've spoken with over the years that if I slow them down enough and saying, why you're here, why this is the issue, why this isn't working. If it's not so much about being honest with yourself. We're plenty honest, but we just, as soon as honesty shows up to the point where it makes it uncomfortable, we just kind of, we're not having that today. We just kind of push it aside. Like you said, sweep it under a rock, box it up, put it on the shelf for a later day. So we're plenty honest, because I think that's what causes so much of the regret and the anger and the concern, because you can't lie inside your own head. You can only try to lie in actions and words, but the honesty prevails because it's driving you and it's yelling at you inside your head, demanding you pay attention like a screaming child. And so it's just that, it's this process of again, going back to the simplicity of breathing, which takes all those voices. And I kind of imagine it, I was talking to somebody the other day and said, try to make a decision today without being centered, without taking time to calm down. It's like actually being on The Price is Right and looking over your shoulder and asking, hey, listen, what should I do? And you got 800 idiots behind you screaming all these different opinions, and you're trying to make a decision. And I said, that's the average mind today. It seems like it's just like all this noise. And so you gotta dwindle the audience down to about maybe 2 or 3 people, right? It kind of reminds me of a bumper sticker that you see quite often. It says, "What would Jesus do?"
Right.
And why I like the bumper sticker, and I keep, people say, "Well, like, are you a Christian?" It's, well, not necessarily. So, but I understand the reference. Said, if I was going to choose a way of being in the world, a way of responding and being, and I look at that name, Jesus Christ, and say, okay, well, or Buddha, or Mother Teresa, or insert your name there. It gives me a reference point, and then through that name, it gives me access to those parts of me that are more true than perhaps the chaotic part. And it gives me an access to a set of values. It gives me access to a set of virtues. It gives me access to a way of being in the world. So if I don't believe I can do it, if I don't believe I had the capacity to right the ship in my life, and if I ask, well, what would Jesus do? I'm actually still inside my own head.
Right.
But I'm accessing the best part of who I can be. And I think that for me, that was a real powerful tool. It's actually having these role models, like, you know, reading the biography of Gandhi, or reading Einstein, or reading Mother Teresa's bio, and really understanding the mindset of these people, saying, well, if I could model anybody in this day and age, who could I role model if I don't believe in myself, right? Who could I role model? And that's what that bumper sticker always meant to me, is that I can insert any name of somebody I could model, maybe a grandfather, like you name it, and it would give me access to the emotional intelligence necessary to make it to the next level of evolution, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's really important, to be able to do that and to model them. And I kind of want to also bring in one of the things that I've noticed in the work that I do, because I run transformational program.
Right.
And one of the foundation, from my observation, it's important to really understand self-love in the process of it. Because I've noticed people too, so they model, but instead of noticing what to access, like you say, the positive qualities, they started noticing the gap that they didn't have.
Right.
And then they started judging themselves for not being able to do that.
Right.
And then that actually, causes them to fall into the hole deeper and deeper because of that gap that they have, right? And I found that, so it's important in the process of all that. Self-love is the foundation of it. So knowing that, it's okay, I have that gap right now, instead of judging yourself like, geez, I'm not there yet, or,
Right.
what can I do? So I think that piece is important to carry along while you're doing that. So that's
Right.
one thing that I've noticed. And I will come back to what I was talking about. I find that a lot of people are finding a lot of challenges during this time. The breakdown that we're going through is because I use the word integrity.
Right.
And you were talking about consciousness and intuitive. We hear those voices. For me, that's why we're out of alignment within ourselves, because we innately kind of know,
Right.
but then our heart is saying, let's go left.
Right.
But our mind is saying, let's go, no, I'm not sure, because we've been going right all the way.
Right.
I think it's safer to go to the right. Let's just do that, right? And the body's kind of like, maybe not, I'm not sure. Let's see. So we're really out of integrity and out of alignment. And I do feel a big part of what's going on. I think one of the conversations we were going to talk about is mental health.
Right.
And I do feel part of it is because we are out of integrity ourselves. We're out of alignment within ourselves. And that's what's causing. And then the higher selves too, because the higher selves kind of guide you too. And we were talking about how we're resisting, right? Our body. Our mind's going, no. And that's where the out of alignment. And sometimes you need to have experiences that you will, wake up and say, hang on, this is why you're here. Here's your purpose.
Right. It's I've had this statement. Actually, it was the foundational question I used for years when I was creating my program. Is that one of the primary reasons that there's any unhappiness is that we live in the contrast between knowing better and doing better. Because why would we feel bad if we didn't know the difference? If we didn't know that our behavior should be different than what it is? If our actions should be different than what it is, our thoughts should be different than what they are. So there must be some intelligence that we can access, because otherwise there'd be no discomfort, right? There has to be a reference that we're referencing to, which leads to the idea of being integrity. So, so would something as simple as breath work allow you to, so can you give us an intention that somebody could use doing something as simple as breath work to allow them to sit back in integrity? Because it sounds like a very complicated moral conundrum. But what would be a simple way? Can I use breathing to access my integrity? What would be an easy way to go about that?
Well, I think, with breathing, what comes to my mind is just, again, take the moment, quiet yourself down, right? Do it with breath. Again, slow down your breath. So that's listening to the body.
Right.
Like, so if you want to come back into integrity, let's, go through every aspect. So just let's take some time to listen to your body right now with breath. And, our body will tell us that we need deeper, grounded breath. right? Because we're operating on automatic, we forget.
Right.
The true breath, take that time. Like you said, breathe through your nose. So listen to your body. What does your body need? Take that time. And then the next thing, you might um, feel now the next stage, with breath. And just breathe. What am I feeling right now? It's not about resisting, pushing,
Right.
making it wrong. It's just, okay, I'm feeling anxious right now. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Because we're just human beings. We have feelings, right? And the more you breathe, then you set your intention, right? Now, hey, am I anxious? Let's breathe. I'm calm. I'm sending calm to all parts of my body. I feel calm. Like it's just, so I think being intentional that way, like going through every part and in your mind. So sometimes our mind chatters a lot. That's actually, they call them the gremlin or whatever. The book I'm reading is called Reptiles. So, you hear thoughts. And what I teach people is, don't judge your thoughts. If it's just talking, let it talk. Let it do when you're breathing, just listen. It's not you. They're just thoughts. So when you're breathing, just listen to those thoughts. I've listened to my thoughts. It can be really weird. I don't know if you've done that, David, but I've heard like sometimes it talks about, weird stuff that I'm not even thinking about, but I just, okay, great, awesome. You're passing by. That's awesome. So it's not about resisting, because the more we resist something, the more it's going to persist. The kind of what you were talking about, right? The more it's stress and wants to go there more. Same thing, right? I like to use because I use flip charts in my programs, so simpler ways of teaching. So the more you resist it, the more it wants to stay.
Right.
If you're breathing, just take time to listen to your thoughts, not be attached, and just allow it to go and not judge it, not thinking it's right or wrong. And you notice, again, just with, setting the intention of calmness, your thoughts will start to calm down.
Right.
I hope that I answer your question.
Yeah, well, no, because it was perfect. Because as you said, you get to a space, as you get to this calmer space, then you can set your intention, because then it becomes more clear to you how you want to be anyhow. By getting through all those layers of stress and confusion and chaotic thought processes, it's hard to set your intention here when you got so many things going on. So maybe the original intention is that I just want to be calm, and so let's just put that in place so I can actually clear the smoke or blow the fog away, so I can actually see what's available to me, and then my intuitive self will actually say, "This is who I need to be. This is how I need to move forward in my life." But you have to get the monkey mind quiet and into that space. And I say, yeah, actually, as you're talking through it, I found myself, I was kind of going, that's good.
Yeah, and then you can really then listen to, like you said, your intuitive self, your higher self, right? And that's like, okay, just what do I need right now? What do I need at this moment? What do I need for today? Kind of. So little steps again. But one thing I do want to say, talk about breath. I like to, one of the things that I like to share with people is use your voice too. So breath is one thing, but we don't notice the power of our voice. So I actually teach people with breathing, if you need to sigh after that, I encourage you to sigh. Because by using your voice and exhaling through your voice, you're actually releasing a lot of this tension in your body as well.
Right. Yeah, it's again, just so many old ideas that have been around for thousands of years that are just now, and that we need it more than ever. Like, I could imagine, you think about when those ideas are first put into practice, and what they considered stress, and that, 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, and they had these practices that evolved to take care of as a grounding element in states of stress. I'm going, you got 9 camels, everybody around you, right? It's just, and yet we live in this world that is so chaotic and so just how much, now more than ever do we need those practices, and how much more now than ever do we need to become, develop that kind of mastery, the mastery of just, not the mastery of all the peripheral things, but the mastery of just being ourselves, the mastery of centering ourselves on a constant basis. I do that with athletes all the time. I said it's just, when I take an athlete through, the very first couple things we do in the first couple of months is that we just work on core development, posture, and congruency. I said, I don't need to do all those other things. I don't have to get you on the field. If I just improve core strength, posture, congruency, make sure that you're aware of it here. You can think, you can feel, and you can do. You can think, feel, and do. And we go through this process of actually, that's all we do is get caught up in this alignment. These words are very transferable, right? Alignment, congruency, core integrity. On a physical level, athletes, they naturally become faster, they naturally become stronger, they naturally become more injury resistant, they're more agile, they're more flexible, they're more dynamic. And all we didn't do any of all the, okay, you got to do these drills and buy this book and do this course and this, you got to eat this protein. No, we just have to make you centered. And that's all I'm going to do. And my company was called Core Essentials, right? Because I recognize just how powerful just that one thing, get the core active, make sure that you understand it very, very clearly. And then all your movements are aligned. It's almost like precognition, right? So I'm getting ready, let's say I want to go for a run. Just thinking about going for the run automatically turns on this core structure, which automatically stabilizes and aligns my body like it does it before my foot even moves. And I think this, is so relevant. Again, same nervous system, same brain, right? But it's just the same thing going on. Whatever the creative process made it look very complicated, but the actual operating manual only has one page.
Right. Right.
Right. Yeah, it's not too hard to operate. To build it, that's complicated. But to operate it actually was pretty simple. And they just took that idea of core congruency and I said, well, let's just put it into our psycho-spiritual self. And I said, well, hey, same rules, same nervous system. Mm-hmm. So if I know that space of integrity, which you talked about, if I know how I want to show up there, and I know what that means, I can articulate how I want to be in the world, then that's for me, that's a part of my breath work. But it's only, it's only 2 or 3 things. I have 2 or 3 ideas. I chose words like truth, courage, and compassion as ideas that I want to meditate on. And that's all I do. I don't have to go to my bookshelf and rip out a book. And I've read enough. If I never read another book, and if I never read anything else for the rest of my life, I'd probably be okay. So I don't need to find something that's missing. I just need to use what I've already got.
Right.
But it's that stabilization part where if I know what my core values are, like I know what my core strengths are, and if that's all I do for the next couple of months, I'll probably be way farther ahead.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
So it's just now you run programs. I mean, that's how I got to know of you through Sean and Carrie Lynn. Do you currently? So how are you currently working with people now?
So what has happened during the lockdown? I created a YouTube channel, a show, just so that way I can still continue to support people. Right. So on the show, I'll share some of these different ways of centering, being present, and right. Messaging. We are pivoting some of our program online right now. So there are some that's online. Actually, next month we're launching the Loving Yourself program that I've actually done in person, but now it's going to be online. So we are pivoting online as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So some programs are online.
Yeah. So I'll make sure that of course below this podcast there'll be links to all those different programs that you have available, and so that people can find you out there in the vast social media world. But I think it's important. There's so much that I can do on my own, but there's so much we can do collectively that's so much more powerful. And it's and I was always told that's a sign of wisdom, is realizing that you don't know as much as you think you know, right?
Yeah, no, and every day, sometimes I reflect and say, oh my God, and I'm so glad that divine guided me, right? That's I would tell you. Sometimes I look at my own programs like, oh, that we created that. Oh, I didn't know that, but then I know it's divinely guided. So yeah, absolutely. I think as I grow more, I realize the more I don't know.
Right.
That's been more of my own journey in that process, you know.
Yeah. And it's very exciting, because it's just the only regret I have is that, as far as I know, that I'm going to hit about 97, and I got to figure, I'm excited to be in this conversation, and because it's just in conversation where so much is illuminated, but that also it's part of the storytelling piece that actually people can come along for the ride. They can illuminate. It's rather than telling somebody what to do, but the conversations like these I find are just so much more powerful, because it's our old way of expression. It's the old narrative. It's the old way of healing. Well, it's just in
Yes.
storytelling, right?
Yes, in
And
storytelling. And that's also the way we do our programs. We use games. So we don't,
right,
and I call myself facilitator. I'm not a trainer. I'm not data dumping to you.
right,
We use games as a way, because at the end of the day, we all come from very different, diverse background,
right,
different experiences. Through games is for you to learn about yourself in that
right,
process. And your process is different from someone else.
right,
But in that way, the goal is for you to learn about yourself, like you said,
right.
then master yourself, right? And then with mastery, it's because you can only lead your life ultimately, no one else's. We like to control people, but we can't do that. There's
Yeah,
no way,
yeah,
ultimately we can only do for ourselves.
yeah,
And
yeah,
to create that life, it starts with ourselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Well, listen. Well, thank you so much. For being open and willing to have this conversation. It just, I knew I'd be talking to you in person, well, virtually anyhow, at some point in time, because when I heard about you and Sean and Karen said, yeah, she's one of your people, man. You have to reach out to her. You got to talk to this. Got to talk to this lady. And of course, yeah, I'm glad I did. I think there's so much more benefit to having people knowing that they have resources, and that it just, and kind of what you said. It's not like, you know we're helping facilitate possibility. The power resides inside each individual, and but it's the goal of the facilitator to expose people to their own self, their own strength.
Yeah.
So
I'm removing the smoky.
uh, yeah, because you want people to trust themselves. You want them to trust their own judgment, to live in that space where they're not reliant on constantly on external validation, and because that's way too complicated, and that creates so much codependency, which we don't need. We just but to see those people empowered, and I think that's the beautiful part, is that if people are in that space and they're willing to have these conversations, willing to reach out to people like yourself, I think they'll realize that there's so much more to them. And once we clear up the smoke screens and have some simple strategies to get centered, remain centered, I think the path forward will be exciting instead of fearful, because now we actually have the opportunity to really rewrite, because the whole slate's been clean, to rewrite a really extraordinary future that's been way different than the narrative that we lived in our past. So
Right.
yeah, very
Yeah,
beautiful.
absolutely. And I think one thing I want to add for those who are listening, just know that, you know, I know stress feels overwhelming, but one way, just take a body, since you're a body expert. So one thing I know, I've learned this from Buckminster Fuller.
Right.
He talks about perturbation, right? So our cell needs to be perturbated in order for it to split and grow. So part of the goal of, being in this chaotic stress time, it's also the opportunity for us to grow and expand.
Right.
So I think if you look from that lens, it can be less overwhelming, and
Right.
just look at what's the possibility, like you say,
Right.
because the breakthrough is going to come, right? Every breakdown, there is a breakthrough.
Yeah.
And kind of like the caterpillar never knew it was going to be a butterfly anyway, but it had to
Right.
go through that whole messy process.
Right.
Then it's like, wow, there you go.
Well, yeah. Well, it's necessary. It certainly was time for this all to happen.
Yeah.
But it, like you said, doesn't have to be a negative thing. I think it just, we can change the narrative going forward to really develop
Mhm.
something beautiful. So again, thank you so much. And again, for everyone listening, again, all our contact information will be below this recording. And if you do have questions, again, make sure you reach out. There's if this particular conversation isn't your cup of tea, remember, you'll find the answer you're looking for, you, but, but do continue to look, do continue to explore possibilities, because something will out there exist for you specifically, and you just never give up until you come on upon that answer. So,
Yes.
all right, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, David, for having me.